We're going to talk about vulnerability. It's going to be touchy-feely fun. Just kidding, it won't be touchy-feely. But we are talking about vulnerability. And, I was thinking about, I just asked God because I'd committed, I don't know, like a month ago or so to doing this. I told Vicky I would take this day to speak. And then I was like, I don't know what I'm sharing about. And then she like reminded me on Sunday and I was like, oh yeah, it's in my calendar. I just haven't looked that far in advance. So here I am sharing, and I just was like, God, what should I talk about? And Monday evening, as I'm in the middle of a codependent workshop right now, and I really sensed I was supposed to talk about vulnerability. So here we are. I have a love-hate relationship with this whole vulnerability thing. I realize that I want it because I've seen how it's grown me closer to others in intimacy and depth. And yet when it comes up again and I have to get vulnerable again and I have to go deeper, it's really hard and it's really scary. Right now I'm learning, I think, just on a whole new level of how to be vulnerable with myself, something that I don't think I fully understood until recently. And in turn be vulnerable with God. And yeah, I didn't realize how I wasn't even that in tune with that. Yeah, but I do hate vulnerability because it is scary. Being truly vulnerable about that thing, you guys can think about that for yourself. What is that thing? That thing that I would rather hide, that thing I'd rather keep a secret, that thing that I want to forget about or pretend that it doesn't exist. To talk about that thing and then even admit it to myself is really scary, but that is vulnerability. It's a place that we would perceive as weakness. And so today you may not identify, I know this is an all addictions meeting, you may not identify as a codependent, but certainly I would say across all addictions, no matter what you're addicted to or have been addicted to, we all could use some emotional sobriety. We all could learn how to get emotionally healthy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I have some stories or some ideas of vulnerability that I brainstormed. Number one is Nerf guns. I don't know if you have a Nerf gun or you've ever used one, but recently, this Christmas, we were introduced to them because me and my daughters decided it was time to get some Nerf guns for the boys in our house. Turns out they're for us too. But we got some guns and we got little ones because my kids are 7, 5, and 3. So I was like, let's get age appropriate Nerf guns. And so they're very manageable. You can shoot 3 to 4 at one time and then you have to reload. Okay. So we do that and we have some friends over for Christmas and they're like, sweet, Nerf guns. They kind of make some welts. This is awesome. And then a few days later, our friends, they're on this call right now. You can guess who. They were like, oh, it's boxing week. And so they show up with like massive automatic Nerf guns that are like massive and you can shoot like 20, ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. And so you got to be really careful coming in my house now. You are very vulnerable if you come into my house because you could get sniped at any given moment. And it's like they don't have great aim. Sometimes it's like right on your face. Sometimes it's like way too close. And I live in a state of vulnerability now because we have Nerf guns. The next thing I was thinking of for vulnerability, if this will paint a nice picture, my sweet little daughter there with Vicky, she's just a sweet little elf-like thing. And she went through a phase, thankfully it was short, but I think when she was 2, I would be washing the dishes. And like, let's say it's summertime and I'm wearing shorts, so a good chunk of skin is available there. And she would just come up behind me and just bite the back of my calf muscle. And like, it would hurt so much and like take me by surprise and I'd freak out. And I think I mostly use good language when it would happen, but sometimes I'm out of control because it's like, I didn't see that coming. And now all of a sudden I'm doing dishes and I'm like, I'm feeling vulnerable every time I'm doing dishes. Like I got to kind of like keep an eye of what's going on because I could get bitten at any given moment. So those are things of vulnerability in my house. But then I was thinking about, I have some more serious ones. The first time that I did a fifth step, and that fifth step is to be confessing my fourth step, my inventory work to another human being and before God. And so I did that, and my sponsor, who was taking me through, she presented this idea of, all right, and is there anything that you don't want to take to the grave that you want to confess right now? You're like, oh. And so she said at the beginning, and then she said at the end, she's like, this is a safe place, that if there's anything that you need to say that you don't want to take to your grave, like, I want to give you that gift, that opportunity to admit that right now, and say it before God, before yourself, and before her, another person. I think vulnerability also can just simply be like admitting to or confronting someone else that they've hurt me. That can be really hard because I don't know how they're going to react. I don't know if they're going to deny it. I don't know if they're going to like reject me. I don't know if they'll like say that I'm stupid or I should like lighten up or, just no big deal or minimize it or whatever. But simply saying to someone, hey, like this happened and that really hurt. That's vulnerability. And then I thought back to the biggest vulnerability story that I can think of, and that one is about Adam and Eve. This in the Bible, the very first book, at the very beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and He created everything that we know and see right now, including ourselves. And so God created a man and a woman in the garden, and they lived in this beautiful, tranquil place where there was nothing, they wanted for nothing. Everything was provided for. They lived in perfect peace, this thing called shalom. There was wholeness, there was goodness, like it was bliss. It's everything that when we complain right now and say that's not fair, or I wish it was like this, like that's just what is. Like there was total contentment. And they didn't actually know that there was any kind of vulnerability at all for them. Like they were like actually naked. And it was like, fine, everything's good. And they didn't know that they were vulnerable until they disobeyed God. And then they reacted. And they went into hiding. They like went and hid from God, it says, and they sewed up these like fig leaves and placed them on themselves because suddenly they realized they were naked. And so we've been hiding ever since that story. And we have been ashamed and scared to be vulnerable ever since that story. And yet, like within our genetic makeup, I would argue, our design itself, we desire to be known. We desire to be seen. And we desire to go back into that state of being, of like that nakedness, and completely be known by God, by others, and by ourselves. So we all want to be known. I think we can agree on that. We all want to belong, to be accepted, and not just accepted for our strengths, but also for our weaknesses. I worked at Starbucks a long time ago, and I remember this like one friend that I had there, and I was young, and Josh and I got married young, so we're a bit of an anomaly there. And this one guy's like, "Oh, you guys are such a cute couple. It's so adorable." And then I would just like tell stories about like a fight we had or something. And then he's like, stop, like, don't, like, you're wrecking this beautiful marriage that I assume you have. Like, stop telling me those stories. And which is probably appropriate to not tell those stories. But what I mean to say is that like, he didn't want to hear the bad. He only wanted to see the good. And that's not reality. And I think I actually responded this way is like, what makes our relationship good is that we can fight and we can show each other our weaknesses and we're loved even then. And isn't that what we really want, is to actually fully be able to let our guards down and be loved anyway. And so I encourage you, if you do have a pen and paper, you need to get one, maybe get one. I'm going to do a little reading from this book. This is what I'm studying right now in a workshop, and it's called The Codependent's Guide to the 12 Steps. It's by Melody Beattie. And so I just finished my fifth step, and we are on to six. But in this book, from the fifth step chapter, there's a little section about vulnerability that I really felt led to read. And so, yeah, I'm going to read from page 90, just kind of about a full page worth. So, yeah, if you want to have a pen and paper, go for that. If you want to just kind of close your eyes and listen, that works too. So here's what it says. This is Melody Beatty speaking from her experience. I'm learning that my real strength lies in vulnerability. I've also learned something else. Until I'm entirely ready to accept who I am, what I feel, what I want, and what myself is telling me, I cannot achieve intimacy. When I am ready to take that same risk with people that I took when I walked into that fifth step room, I will have the kind of relationships I'm seeking. I'm not talking about confessing my sins to people. I'm talking about sharing my deepest secret, who I am. Not revealing myself in my relationships is turning out to be the ultimate way I try to control them. If I don't tell you how I feel, what I want, what I think, then maybe you'll like me. If I become who you want me to be, if I don't rock the boat, if I don't own my power, then you'll like me. Then I can control the course of the relationship. That is an illusion. When I don't reveal who I am, my relationships become superficial, and my real self will ultimately emerge anyway. By the time it does, I will feel resentful, angry, and needy. It doesn't work to put our lives on hold for anyone. And this is a quote from a person named Judy. She says, I've done a formal fifth step, but I do many fifth steps now with my friends, said Judy. I do this by letting them know who I really am. I try to keep current. If we want to take down the walls in our relationships, we need to take down our walls. That is an effective and appropriate use of our power. Just a little more here. We've talked about telling another person about our shortcomings, wrongs, mistakes, failures, and secrets. We've talked about sharing ourselves with others, who we are, what we want, need, think, and desire. There are two more parts to this step, this fifth step. We need to tell God about ourselves. Quietly, loudly, silently, during our morning meditation, our afternoon break, or our evening walk, we need to say, God, this is who I am. This is what I did. This is what I think. This is what I want. This is what I need. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm worried about. These are my fears and my hopes. These are my old beliefs. This is what I think I can't deal with, what I can't do. This is what I need help with. Hey, God, this is me. We need to be honest, open, and vulnerable with our higher power. When we can do that, we will achieve the highest form of spirituality. We are not burdening God by bringing ourselves to God. That's what God wants, and God cares that much. Besides telling God, we need to tell ourselves who we are, what we want, what we have done, our wrongs, our secrets, our good points, our beliefs. We need to admit to ourselves what we are really feeling, what we fear, and who we are. We need to break through our own denial. We need to be honest with ourselves. So I want to offer you a tool. It's a gift that I've been given. And it's quite simple. And maybe for you, you think, oh, I do this all the time anyway. But for me, I didn't. And so I want to give you a way of combating learning how to feel what we're feeling, learning what we need, and then actually presenting that in vulnerability to another person. So I'm going to give you an example of what this looks like. So here's an example. I have a husband. We fight sometimes. And so I I'm going to give you an example of, like, let's say he and I get into a fight, and I'm starting, I don't know if you can feel like this, but I can start feeling like tensing up inside. I can feel I'm getting irritated, and I can feel anger and sadness or emotionally just reacting inside. And like, I know I'm not okay. And what he's saying is getting me more and more frustrated. And like, I'm ready to just like react. And so instead of that, and even if you do react a little bit, or even if I reacted a little bit, um, I realize I actually need to give myself a timeout. And actually, in this fight that him and I did have, he even asked me, well, what do you need right now? Like, you don't seem okay. As soon as he says that, typically I just start denying it and I get defensive and I'll be like, what do you mean? Like, I'm fine. I'm fine. And he's like, clearly you're not fine. So even if that happens, whatever. The tool is to give myself a time out. And sometimes I would do that anyway, because I would, run away and I would just be like, oh, whatever, I can't take this. I need a break. But before that happens, perhaps instead, I could say, all right, I don't know what I'm feeling right now. I'm really frustrated and like, I can't keep talking about this right now. I need to go figure this out. So I'm just like, I'm going for a timeout. Don't follow me. Don't worry. I'll be back in 10 to 15 minutes, because sometimes I'd be back in 2 hours. So just letting that person know, I'll be back. Okay. I just need to sort this out right now. And I can't do that right now. So here's what to do. I go away and I detach. And so to detach, meaning I need to not think about this right now, because if I keep ruminating on it, it doesn't help. I'll go back down there even more flared up and ready to combat with him. So I'll go away and I will detach. Sometimes that's like a meditation app for like 5 minutes, and a pause app is really good. It could even mean like putting on a Netflix documentary and timing myself for 5 minutes so that literally I don't think about anything in regards to him or the fight we're having, and I just get cleared out and come back down, and the intensity lowers. And so after about 5 minutes and I've been able to detach, that's when I go to God and I ask him, number one, what am I feeling right now? And to get clear on that. So in this example, I was feeling unloved. I didn't feel like he was not acting loving towards me, and I was feeling unloved. And perhaps a fear that was coming up is that, well, there you are. I'm unlovable. If I do this, I'm unlovable. So once I'm clear on what I'm feeling, the next question to ask is, what do I need right now? As a codependent, I'm really, really good at figuring out, or at least I think I'm really good at figuring out what everyone else needs, but often I have no idea what I need right now. And so I realized in this example, you know what, I just need a hug. And so at that point, now that I'm clear on that, with myself and with God, then I get to be vulnerable. I go downstairs. I talk to my husband and say, hey, I'm back. I just needed to like clear my head. And I realized when we were having that conversation, I felt really unloved. Like I have this fear that I can be unlovable. And I realized what I need. Can you just give me a hug right now? And maybe it doesn't solve whatever the problem is that's going on. Maybe it doesn't solve that conflict, but what it does is it gets me back into, what am I feeling right now? Why does this bother me? And what do I need right now? And how do we come together? And you know what? In my vulnerability, intimacy is created. A healthy bond is created. And that helps us work through whatever conflict is there, because we're clear on like, we're for each other. We love each other. This is true. And now we can work through this together. And so, now in my choice to be vulnerable, we've created intimacy and a healthy emotional bond. My needs get met. I feel loved now, and I feel known, and I feel seen. Um, and and it's not just between him and I, but actually it began between God and I. And so that's just huge to me. And so I just need to wrap up, obviously. Here we go. But I want to just say, be vulnerable with safe people. I was thinking of this image. I went to high school in Saskatchewan, or I grew up there as well. And like one of my fondest memories actually in high school was like going to football games with all my friends. And then like there's all the football players and it's so exciting. Anyway, so you'd go and it was freezing outside. And like, honestly, without fail, at least once to twice a season, sometimes more, there was like some crazy teenager that streaks across the field. I don't know if that's ever happened, if everyone's ever witnessed that. I've witnessed that far too many times. And like it's freezing outside and they just like unleash their naked body and run across a field and everyone's like, oh my gosh. It's like, it's crazy. Sometimes people do that emotionally with other people and you're like, oh, as if you just said that. Like, oh, it feels like you're naked right now. And I've done that. I'm not saying other people have done that. I've done that. I did that probably in an effort because I was so desiring depth of relationship with people. I was so desiring like intimacy that I did it in a completely inappropriate way. So I just want to say that don't be an emotional streaker, if I can say that. But be with safe people to practice this and begin vulnerability with yourself. Begin vulnerability with God. And then do that. Practice that in relationships. It's really, really important. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, we don't know the password, do we? There you go. And so in closing, I just want to say, vulnerability is not this scary thing that we do with people just for the sake of doing it and like getting a rush or something. Vulnerability actually has set me free. It has been essential for me to be honest. Vulnerability creates intimacy. It creates depth. It actually is healing because my voice gets heard. I get seen. I belong. I can see that I'm accepted and loved, whether it's for my strength or for my weakness. And vulnerability, especially as I've worked through the 12 steps a few occasions here now thoroughly, has been a weapon against shame and guilt. It's bringing that which I want to hide and that which I want to keep in the dark or keep secret. It brings it into the light. And as soon as it comes out into the light, it holds no power anymore over me. And that is essential in our recovery. I can't hide things. I can't afford to be dishonest. I need to bring these things out into the light. And actually, in that practice of doing that more and more, it's not that scary. It shows me every single time that when I do this with God and I get vulnerable and honest with Him and myself, and then with trusted people, it's really healing and it really does set me free, and a healing and transforming thing takes place.